Now, back to Impact Syndicate Sports with your host, Ski.
Hey, we're with five-time world champ, Hall of Famer, movie actor, veteran. I mean, I can go on and on. Mr. Randy Couture, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
Real good. Randy, it's been fun getting to know you over your career and things. And this week, I know you number one, Expendables 2, number one.
Yeah, we've had a very, very good week. A great opening weekend, and the movie's doing fantastic, which is good on a lot of fronts. It looks like we'll probably get a chance to do Expendables 3, which will be a blast. And I just think it's a pretty unique project to see all these action icons come together for one project, one movie.
When you talk about the action icons, going through your years growing up, wrestling, UFC and all that, did you watch a lot of action movies?
I did, of course. I think every red-blooded young American boy grew up on Lone Wolf, McQuaid, Rambo,
yep.
Conan the Barbarian, the Die Hard trilogy, or however many Die Hards there ended up being. I mean, those were the movies we all talked about, and the moves and the one-liners and things that they said and did were the things that we emulated.
Same here. I mean, I don't care if it's A-rate, B-rate, what it is, if it's an action movie. But so how fun is it now? You know, when you were competing in UFC and the people would see you, actors, celebrities, athletes, they all enjoyed being around you. Now you get to be the guy on the set that used to watch them, getting to be alongside of them.
Yeah, it's surreal, being on a set, putting on all this tactical gear, picking up guns, and running around with some of those guys that you watched as a kid. It's remarkable.
Well, I'm sure when you were, I don't know how long you've had an interest in acting, but for a while there, I don't know if that might have been the farthest thing from your mind. Now all of a sudden you're on the set, you look at the movies, and there's Randy Couture alongside some of these guys you were talking about.
You know, acting is not something I ever set out to do. If you'd have told me 10 years ago that I'd be acting and that I'd be in a movie with those guys, I would have laughed at you. But it's way outside the box for me, but so was fighting. I was never a kid that grew up fighting. You know, I grew up as a wrestler, and fighting wasn't a huge stretch from wrestling. It's still an individual combative sport. But athletics opened the door for the acting. And it's something I was immediately intrigued with, took seriously, got a real agent, started taking, some acting lessons, found an acting coach, and got better and better jobs. And that's been about 7 years now that's been going on. And here we are with Expendables 2. I'm pretty excited with the direction and the way things have been going for me. It's been awesome.
Well, and then when you talk Expendables, right before that, you had your own solo, just like a main event, being the main event on a card. You have Hijacked. So is there a difference when you are the guy or versus when you're surrounded by a group of guys as in Expendables?
Yeah, there's a difference. Obviously, a little more of the stress and concern that the movie's going to be good and that you do a good job. When you're in almost every scene, it's a little bit different animal. Obviously, with Expendables, there was a whole plethora of guys that all needed their time, needed to do their thing. And I think that was part of the juggling act that made it a unique project, was making sure that everybody kind of got their moment. Where Hijacked, I get to play with some great actors. Vinnie Jones is terrific and been in a ton of things. Dominic Purcell from Prison Break and now Killer Elite and a bunch of movies that he's done over the 20 years of his career. And Hole McAllen, who was someone I knew of from the FX series Lights Out, the boxing series. It only lasted a season, but I thought it was a great series. I actually read for a part in it, and Holt got the nod, so I was excited to get to work with him. And he was fantastic. The fight scenes we had in Hijacked were a lot of fun.
When you, based on doing the action movies now, coming from what you did, obviously you like to stay in shape. How often do you get to go into the gym? I'm not talking about lifting or cardio, but actually go and roll around with the guys still, do any kind of sparring and things like that?
Yeah, I'm in there all the time. I get at least 3 kickboxing workouts in every week, and getting some grappling in with Neil and the guys. It depends, who and what's going on. I'm trying to lend a hand to guys on the team that want some of, the wrestling background that I brought to my fighting style. I've been working quite a bit with Ryan on some of his clinch work and some of his cage fighting tactics, which is obviously an area that I was pretty good at.
When you talk wrestling, we talk MMA. I've always said it with my wrestling background, not your level, but I think that wrestling, out of all the individual boxing, karate, jiu-jitsu, would you say wrestling is the foundation that if somebody has wrestling they can build on?
Well, it seems to be, in my experience, that I can take a wrestler and the wrestler's mindset, physicality, and intensity that a wrestler brings to an individual combative sport, can temper that a little bit, and they can learn the other skills to be effective enough at the boxing, at the jiu-jitsu and submission skills to be a very, very well-rounded fighter. I have a lot more trouble taking a kickboxer or taking a jiu-jitsu guy and kind of teaching him that wrestling mentality and the technique and the subtlety of wrestling and getting him to a place where he's adept enough to take advantage of his background and his strength. It doesn't seem to translate both directions. And I'm not saying that, I mean, you look at a guy like Martin Kampmann, who's a kickboxer from Denmark, and he has spent an amazing amount of time in the last 3 or 4 years that he's been working with us at Extreme Couture, working solely on his wrestling. And his wrestling now is very, very, very good. It's one of the stronger parts of his game now. So, I mean, he's certainly a guy that applied himself and wasn't worried about getting taken down, putting himself in those situations. And I think he's a rare instance where that's the case.
Well, and I think from one of the things I always say about wrestling is you have to make weight that day and compete that day. So you're constantly chewing the gum, spitting in the bathroom, doing what you got to do. So I just always felt the base, get your nose ground in the mat a little bit, trying to cut weight. I always felt that was the best one. If I had to choose one style that you could build around, was the wrestling. Martin Kampmann, he's got an interesting match coming up because he's actually going against a very good wrestler in Johnny Hendricks, who also spent time at your gym as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes for an interesting matchup. Here's a guy, Johnny Hendricks, who's a couple-time national champion in college at Oklahoma State, my alma mater, and he's knocking guys out. He spent the time and has some natural gifts with the power in his hands to be a very, very effective striker. And he's facing a guy who is a striker, came from a kickboxing background, but who spent the last few years diligently trying to add wrestling and certainly submission to his game. And they're squaring up in a mixed martial arts match. It's a pretty cool scenario.
When you're an analyst, is it tough when it's your own guy, but then, too, when you know both of them and you have personal feelings? You're not... For me, when I watch a fight, especially a lot of your guys, because I'm really good friends with a lot of guys from Extreme Couture, and it's hard for me at times to stay neutral and not want to root, or kind of, even if I feel maybe on paper he doesn't really have the nod, but it's hard for me to stay neutral with that.
It can be difficult for sure. Sometimes you have to kind of check your emotions in your heart at the door when you walk in to do your job and really pick fights and technically and tactically how you see a fight going. A lot of times it's a flip of the coin. Either guy, you can make a case for either guy, and I'll usually state that. I'll say, you know what, this fight could go either way. This is how they match up. But because of my personal relationship with so-and-so, I'm going to lean towards that guy because that's how I feel like it's going to go. And let them know right off the foot that I'm a little biased.
Well, you know what? The last UFC event in L.A., I got in trouble. I was in the media section, and I started cheering, which in media you're not allowed. You've got to stay neutral. So I always got to keep that kind of guarded. What was your feelings as far as Bones Jones and not taking the fight and the ripple effect? Because one of the guys, another guy from your gym that I really is Jay. Jay got a hell of an opportunity that now didn't come to fruition, but I hear that maybe he gets to have it down the road. But when a fighter turns down a fight like that, it's a lot more to it than just that one fight.
Yeah, absolutely. It's difficult for all the other guys on that card not to get the chance to go out and compete after long training camps, earn their paycheck and get a chance to show their wares, which is what it's all about. And, I don't know. I think it will definitely affect John down the road. I think as the champ, you've got to step up and fight. And it doesn't matter who they're going to throw in there. And I understand on short notice, Chael Sonnen, poses a whole different set of problems than Dan Henderson. But I think at the end of the day, you still got to do what you do. And my feeling is he should have taken that fight.
Yeah.
And Jay Haran's going to be back on the fight card October 5th. On FX TV is the co-main event for that event. So he's getting his opportunity. Those other guys are still going to get the fight, but now he's got to reset and kind of fashion a camp to get him to peak again in short order for the 5th of October, which is a challenge, but I think he'll be ready. He took the fight with Ellenberger on short notice anyway, so
yeah.
Things happen for a reason. He'll be ready, but I think in the long run, this is the sort of thing that's going to come back and kind of bite John in the butt. And I don't know. Dana's not a guy that forgives and forgets very easily.
Yeah.
So this has never happened before that they've had to cancel a whole card. And so, history was made, and, John's at the center of it, whether it's positive or negative. I certainly don't see it as positive.
Well, and for me, two things not positive. One, that's what's made the difference with MMA and UFC versus boxing, is the guys don't get to pick and choose and avoid one another. The other thing is if I was going to take on Chael, I'd rather take him on 8 days' notice where he's had no camp coming up in weight. But, obviously Greg.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me, too. If I'm looking at him, on literally 9-10 days' notice, that's when you want to jump on a guy, especially a guy that now we're going to reset. There's no way he's going to avoid Chael Sonnen, especially as much rhetoric and stuff is already being thrown around.
Yeah.
That fight is going to happen. Chael is a master at creating that kind of heat. And so, you can't run away from him. So now he's going to have to face him when he's had a full camp and prepared to deal with Don Jones.
Hey, Randy, I know you're busy. One thing that I definitely wanted to touch on before we let you go is I'm a veteran, you're a veteran. This show goes out to the Armed Forces Network. One thing that you do is the Extreme Couture GI Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, obviously in the 80s I wore the uniform for 6 years and finished my 6-year term in the Army with the 101st Airborne Division in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And fortunately for me, during that time period, there were no real conflicts and no real wars. Grenada barely qualified as any of those things, and I wasn't called on to go down there. So now, over 20 years later, getting a chance to affect some of these soldiers' lives who are making those sacrifices, you do have to put it on the line and do all the things that we trained to do when we wore the uniform. It's something that's special to me. We're a small organization. We put on a couple of events a year. A big event is the poker tournament, which the Golden Nugget helps us put on, and it's coming up there around Halloween. We've raised a few $100,000 over the last 4 or 5 years with these small events, the motorcycle poker run, the poker tournament, the golf tournament. And the nice thing about being small is there's no red tape. My staff at the gym helps me run the events, and we write checks and put them right in the hands of families that need some help. Guys that have, lost limbs and are trying to get back on track with education or prosthetics or things that they need to start living their lives again after such a traumatic event are the guys that we're looking to help. And you'd be surprised how hard it is to identify those families, without invading people's privacy and all those sorts of things. It's hard to identify people that need help. That's been our biggest challenge. So I think the more awareness that we get out there to soldiers that are in those situations that need help, that they can contact us, is a huge help for us.
Well, you know what? I'm going to make a commitment on the show and the stuff that we do to try to reach out, spread the word a little bit, and give you some extra media and promotion on the stuff you got coming up. It's always a pleasure for me to have you. You've always been very good with your time with me, and I'm extremely grateful for that. Thank you, Randy.
You bet. My pleasure.
All right. You have an awesome day. I look forward to seeing more from you.
Thanks.
All right.
Have a great day.
All right. Mr. Randy Couture. Man, that guy's an awesome guy. I think he was great for the sport. He didn't back down from any challenge. 5-time champion. And then now he's making his way through the movies as well with all the action. He's just another guy now you can put on your list of action stars you enjoy. So thanks to Randy. We look forward to supporting the Extreme Couture GI Foundation, and we'll be right back.